On behalf of the Office of Alumni and Parent Engagement at Bryant University, welcome to our fourth webinar this spring, designed to share professional expertise with members of the Bryant community. Today, we invite back our two special guests from Amica Mutual Insurance, Amanda Dilley from the class of 2013 and Samantha McSweeney. Amica, founded in 1907 in Providence, Rhode Island, is the oldest mutual insurer of automobiles in the nation, known for superior customer service and financial stability. Both Amanda and Samantha serve as recruiters responsible for identifying and evaluating candidates for Amica's Future Leaders program. For more information, visit futureleaders.amica.com. Now, let me introduce myself. My name is Sharday Hunt-Jonte. I am a class of 2017 graduate and work in the Office of Alumni and Parent Engagement. I'll be moderating today's webinar, which should last approximately for 45 minutes. Without further ado, we will begin with our conclusion of the two-part series titled Post-Bryant Life Part 2. Take it away, Amanda and Samantha.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us today for part 2 of our webinar series. As Sharday mentioned, today we will be covering the basics of insurance. So our goal is to really give you some basic information that you'll need once you're ready to get your own insurance policies after graduation, or maybe you're already a couple years out of graduation and you're just now looking to get your own insurance. We definitely have some great information to share with you guys today, and I'm definitely excited to do so. So to introduce myself, my name is Sammy McSweeney. I'm an account manager here at Amica Mutual Insurance. I just graduated from Providence College about a year ago, and I've had to learn a lot about insurance in the past year as well, for both work, but also my personal life. And I'm also joined here today by Amanda Dilley.
Hi guys, Amanda Dilley here. I'm a graduate of 2013 from Bryant. And yeah, we're really excited to talk to you a little bit more about insurance. A lot of this stuff is information that I would have never known if I didn't work here. So really excited to share some of that with you guys.
Definitely. All right, so just to cover a couple things that we will be talking about in our webinar today. Some of the topics that we're going to go over are renters and home insurance, auto insurance, what you need to know when you're going to get a quote, maybe some typical losses that you might experience having insurance, and kind of how that claims handling process goes. So we'll definitely start to go over some of those things, and let's start off today with our renter's policy. So renter's policies are going to be very common for those of you who are just graduating from college. You're going to need a renter's policy if you're moving out on your own. Maybe this means that you're moving into a one-bedroom apartment by yourself. Maybe you're just renting a single room in someone's home. Or maybe you're renting a floor of a multifamily home with some of your friends or your roommates from college. Something that's important to know for many of you, maybe you're moving back home. I know I live at home now after graduation, and if you are staying on your parents, in your parents' home, you don't need to get a renter's insurance policy. You'll automatically be covered under your parents' policy. It's also important to note that if you are going to have roommates, like I said, maybe you're renting a one-family home with some of your roommates from college, each of you needs to have your own renter's insurance so that you will be covered. So renter's insurance is coverage for your personal property as well as liability coverage. Your personal property is going to be all that stuff that you own and you keep at your house. So we really like to think about it this way. If you had everything, let's say you're moving from your parents' home or from college into a new apartment, everything that you're bringing with you that you're going to have in your apartment, if you were to flip your apartment upside down, all of the things that fall out are considered your personal property. So this doesn't include permanent fixtures, so that might be any sconces that are, or lights that are attached to the walls, maybe cabinets that are permanently attached. That's not included in your personal property, but really think about all of that additional stuff that you might have. That includes your clothes, books, maybe a bookshelf that you have. And it's important to note too that a renter's policy, it doesn't cover the actual structure of the building. The homeowner or the apartment complex that you're renting from should have their own insurance for the building. For you to have coverage, you just need coverage for that personal property. And then on the other hand, we have our liability insurance, which is also included in a renter's policy. This is coverage that would be paid out if someone else is injured on your property and you're found liable. It could be bodily injury or it could be property damage. And there are definitely some things that you do need to know when you're preparing to get a renter's quote. So there is a bit of a process. We need to know what the insurance company will ask when you call in and get a quote. Some of the things to consider is how much all of that personal property is worth. So before you're moving out, before you're calling your insurance company, definitely do a little survey of everything that you own and have a total monetary value in mind when you call for the quote. It's definitely something that they will ask you about how much your personal property is worth, and that's under what we call our coverage C. Some other things to remember are knowing maybe some additional information about the home that you're renting in. Chances are you might get asked when it was built and the condition of the home. Don't worry though, for renters policies, most companies will be less strict with this because again, they're only covering what's inside of the apartment and not the actual structure itself. So some typical losses that you might experience or see that we definitely see here in insurance, working at an insurance company, are some theft, fire, and water damage. If you should experience a loss, the most important thing that we want you to do as your insurance company is prevent any further loss from happening and immediately call your insurance company. So if your sink is overflowing with water, obviously what you want to do first is make sure that you shut the sink off if you can, prevent any further damage from being caused. For example, let's say you have a candle that's left lit and it catches on fire with the curtains. Any of your personal property that's going to be damaged in the fire will be covered. But there are also some exclusions to this, and these are what we call special limits. So these are going to be different and unique to each person and each company, what their policies include. But for example, some policies might only include $1,500 of coverage for electronic equipment should you have that fire, should you have that theft, loss, or water damage. So as I mentioned before, those special limitations that are in policies, there could also be additional coverages that you can purchase for your policies. So here at Amica, we offer some of those. For example, we have our identity fraud expense coverage, limited special computer coverage for maybe your iPad, your phone, your laptop, should any of that get damaged. And then also refrigerated property coverage. This is something that a lot of people don't think about, but if there's a storm and you lose power, all of the food that's in your refrigerator is going to go bad. So a lot of insurance companies will offer coverage for that to reimburse you to get more food. Something else that we offer here at Amica that's really great is something that we call Renters Essentials. This is basically a policy that's based on your typical coverages. It has set options and set coverages, so we kind of like to think of it as a package deal. It has everything that we typically would recommend and limits that we would recommend for a renter's policy. The great part of this too is that for every year that you have a Renters Essentials policy with Amica, you can earn a $100 credit towards a homeowner's policy premium. So you may be renting right now, but maybe in the future you're really looking forward to buying a home. This could be a great option for you to start off with that Renters Essentials coverage, but then save some money when you do need to switch over to a homeowner's policy. So again, a lot of you guys are going to be looking for those renters policies, having an idea of your personal property, what's covered, and what to do in the event of the loss is going to be really important. And some of those things are going to be similar when you do decide to purchase a home. And Amanda is going to tell us a little bit more about that next phase in your insurance needs.
Yeah, so as Sammy mentioned, it's not necessarily the first thing you're thinking about when you graduate school, but definitely a good goal to have is kind of that home ownership. Usually it's a little bit further down the road, but really when you need to have a homeowner's policy is when you're looking to actually own the home, you're owning the dwelling, you're responsible for any repairs that need to be done, if there's any damage to the home. So that's really when you start to look for that homeowner's policy. So there are similar coverages that the renter's policy has. You are covered for your property damage, you are covered for liability, but that one exception for the renter's policy is the actual dwelling itself, the building, and any other structures that you have. So that's actually covered under a homeowner's policy. So like I mentioned, the actual house itself, maybe if you have a detached garage, or if you have an in-ground pool, maybe you have a shed or a fence around your yard, those are the things that are going to be covered by the homeowner's policy, and that's why you need to actually have the homeowner's policy. So when you're looking at what maybe goes into a typical quote, the quoting process for a homeowner's policy can be pretty expansive. You definitely need to make sure that you have a lot of information up front. That will make the process go a lot quicker for you. And we've probably all heard other people talk about how long the home buying process can be. So you really want to make sure that you have all the information there to cut down any time that you can, and maybe any frustration. So things that actually go into your typical quote, the type of home is going to be the biggest thing. That's going to be the biggest factor that factors your premium. That's going to include, the materials that the home is made out of, what the square footage is, what type of flooring there is, what type of lights, what type of outside materials, if there's any custom, built-in bookshelves or custom kitchen cabinets. Those things are really going to increase the price of your premium. And if you think about it, it costs a lot more to repair those things and replace them. So that's why, we want to make sure that you have the coverage there. So you might have a little bit more of a premium in that case. Any previous loss history. So if you've had a renter's policy, maybe you've had a couple losses, those might go onto your homeowner's policy. The deductible is going to be important too. You want to choose your deductible wisely, although it may be tempting to have maybe a $2,500 deductible because that's what lowers your premium. Is that something that you can really afford in the event of a serious loss? You really need to determine, how much could you really be able and willing to pay out in the event of a big loss, because homeowners policies are really for bigger claims. They're not for your everyday repairs. They're for, things that require quite a bit of work. So you want to make sure that you are thinking of that as well. And then another important thing that goes into your homeowner's policy is your credit score. So we here at Amica, and I know a lot of other companies have their own specific kind of algorithm to determine what your insurance score is. So it's not the same as your FICO score or your credit score. That does definitely go into the credit score, but it also takes into consideration your loss history. So that can be something that your representative or agent can speak with you about, but that can affect it too. So you make sure that you have good credit, and just be aware that that can affect your quote as well. So one of the biggest things that will help you out in the process is also getting an inspection on your home. So while you may have actually, done a walkthrough with your realtor and you've seen, the cabinets look great and the walls look great, there might be some things that are behind the scenes that might be a cause of concern. So we really want you to, be aware of these things that might be, typical red flags. We encourage you doing this pretty early in the process and get a quote, don't wait till right before you're looking to close, because you want to make sure that you understand, are there any concerns that need to be addressed before you get that policy or before you close the home, or, make sure that you are able to find out, is the mortgage paying your insurance policy, or are you going to be paying out of pocket for it? So make sure that you understand those things, and having this inspection done beforehand and be able to provide a copy to your representative or your agent will really help speed the process along, because they know what to look for specifically, and they can really even do that sometimes off the phone without you even being there. So some of those things that we're looking for are really the major systems in your home, making sure that those are updated. The biggest thing, your roof is a really big concern. Usually 30 years is about the typical lifespan of a roof. So anything over that can be cause of concern. Maybe if there's any lifting or missing shingles. Potentially if you have any moss or any mold growing on the home, if there's knob and tube is a type of electrical wiring that if it's still connected, that can be a really serious fire concern and a fire hazard. So making sure that if it is in the home, find out if it's disconnected or if it's connected. Galvanized plumbing is a real concern in your plumbing, because it can cause a lot of water leaks and water issues. Maybe if the home has any underground oil tanks, if you're planning to get a trampoline, if you have kids or you want kids in the future, maybe you just want the trampoline, make sure that you know what safety precautions you're going to have. If you're planning on getting a dog, you want to understand, what might potentially be a dangerous breed. I know that's a pretty hot topic and a lot of people have questions on that, but it really is up to the insurance company to make that decision. It's not that specific person that you're speaking with, it's the insurance company as a whole, because there are some dogs that have had, shown previous, aggressive behavior, and they're not maybe willing to take on that risk. So understand that. Maybe any lead in the home, asbestos, where the home is located. If you're right on the water, that can be a concern as well. If there's any pre-existing losses, so if you have maybe hail damage on your home or a shed is dilapidated from the previous owner, make sure that you're addressing that before you're, before you're closing on the home, or you're letting the insurance carrier know that you're going to be fixing that. And then in different regions of the country, there's a lot of different concerns. Maybe in New England area, we're going to have a lot more older homes, so you have to worry about that as being a concern. So with some of those concerns, the reason that we have those concerns is there are some pretty typical losses. So water damage is a huge one. Any water backup, any burst or frozen pipes. Fire can be huge. Wind, theft, falling objects. If you live in a home near you have a lot of wooded area around you. If a big storm comes through and your tree comes down, that can happen very often. And then one thing to remember is that flood is actually not covered under the homeowners policy. So if you are in a flood zone, or if you're looking to get flood coverage, you definitely want to tell your insurance provider, because it goes through a government agency and they can get you in touch with someone, there, and get you, usually they can do the whole quoting process and customer service, but it definitely, there's a 30-day waiting period. So if your insurance company if your mortgage company is requiring you to have flood insurance, make sure you start that process early on so that it's enforced when you look to close. And then there's some things that you can implement for some discounts too. So if some homes have monitoring systems, whether it's a home theft monitoring or if it's a water detection, that can afford you a discount, as well as if your home has been updated, the major systems have been updated. So I know for us, if you've had your roof replaced, your electricity or electrical wiring replaced, and your plumbing, within a certain amount of years, you can get a discount as well. And even little things for both the auto and the homeowners policy, getting an electronic, signing yourself up for electronic pay, or your policies to come electronically, that can save you some money as well. So I know that's a lot of information of what goes into a homeowner's quote, and that can sometimes still be very difficult for homeowners to understand what really goes into the premium and why sometimes it can be so high. And Sammy, has this conversation on a daily basis in her, in her role now. So she's going to talk to you a little bit about how to understand why premium can be so high or so low sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. So like Amanda mentioned, there are a lot of questions that you guys are going to be asked when you're calling in to get a quote. And a lot of this is going to have to do with the features of your home. So while you may provide some information, what the square footage is, what the siding is on the home, how many bathrooms, that information, we also have tools as an insurance company that we use to determine that information as well. And then we calculate what we call the replacement cost. So this is the dwelling coverage that you will have on your policy. So should you have a loss, maybe you have a total loss, fire, your house burns down, how much money is it going to take for the insurance company to rebuild your home to exactly what it was like before? And that's the goal of the insurance company if you do have a loss. So we insure at the replacement cost of the home. So if you did have that fire total loss, all of the debris have to be taken away. That costs money. It costs money to pay the people who are going to do that work. In addition, now you're building up an entire brand new home. All of the materials and all of the labor that it takes to do that, that's going into the replacement cost of your home. In addition, you can think about things, if your home was built 10 years ago in a new neighborhood and they were building 5 to 10 homes that all look exactly the same, they're going to get discounts on ordering materials in bulk. They may get discounts on labor by having so many people and maybe more flexibility in who's working there. Those things go into your replacement cost as well. So an example that I like to give is replacement cost is different than your market value. So you might be buying a little cottage that's right on the water on Cape Cod or maybe in Narragansett, and you could be paying over $1 million for that little cottage because of the location. That market value is really high. But the replacement cost of that little cottage might only be $500,000. Who knows? Maybe it's only $200,000. that's where the difference is between the replacement cost and that market value. On the same token, it could be you're purchasing a really large home, a really beautiful home in a rural area that's maybe not as popular, maybe the market isn't as trending there. You know, you could purchase the home for $300,000, but to rebuild that beautiful home, it may cost over $1 million. So it's just something good to understand when you have a conversation with an insurance representative while you're getting a quote. There is a major difference between what we're insuring you at replacement cost and what maybe you purchased the home for. So have that conversation with your representative. I'm sure that they will help you to understand where that is coming from. But, you know, Amanda mentioned maybe you have custom bathrooms in your home. That's going into your replacement cost. Maybe you have a really nice wooden deck on the back of your house, or an enclosed sunroom. Those are all things that are going into your replacement cost. So definitely a good thing to know, because we do understand it can be confusing when you're trying to determine, well, what am I being insured for and why? So definitely like to talk about that with our insureds. And I think that's it for our homeowners section, but we're going to jump right into auto now, and talk a little bit about when you need auto insurance, you know, what's covered, and maybe some typical losses. So most of you guys are going to have your own car after graduation. If you're still living at home, I know I mentioned I am, it's okay to stay on your parents' insurance policy. You can do this for as long as you want, as long as you're living in their household. But when it comes time to move out, or maybe just after graduation and you're getting that new home or new apartment, you do need to get your own auto insurance. So basically, simply put, if you have a vehicle, you need to have insurance. In most states, it's going to be strictly reinforced that you have insurance. And there are a lot of different things that you have to consider for what auto insurance is right for you. Something to consider is city living. So maybe after graduation from Bryant, you're moving to Boston or New York City, and you're going to have your car there with you, but you're maybe not going to drive it that often. You might be thinking, oh, I don't want to pay for this auto insurance, or I don't think that I need coverage. I'm only driving my car every once in a while. Something else that auto insurance coverage provides you with that policy is pedestrian coverage. So, you know, maybe you're walking to work in Boston or New York City. If you got hit by a car, you would have coverage under your auto insurance policy, which is really important, especially if that's something that you're doing very frequently. Something else to consider too is maybe you're moving to the city and you're not bringing a car. Let's face it, nowadays everyone uses the subway. People know how to call an Uber or a Lyft. It's not common for people, it is common for people who are living in the city to not have a car. But you're still walking around, you still have that potential that maybe something will happen when you're a pedestrian and you want to have coverage. A standard auto policy, you know, will protect you, but you have to have a vehicle. So if you don't have a vehicle, there are also other insurance policies that specialize in this risk. So you don't have a car, but you want to have that pedestrian coverage. Call around to different carriers and see if they might offer that option, because it's definitely something that's important to consider. I know that's something else that sometimes people can be confused about, or could go back into kind of that calling an Uber. Zip cars are pretty popular now, so maybe if you don't have a car, maybe you have a car in the city, but you're going to rent a Zip car to go on a little road trip on the weekend. Amanda's just going to give us a little bit of information about how insurance responds when you are renting a car.
Yeah, so this is one of the biggest questions that we get is, you know, do I need to get insurance coverage when I'm renting a car? So the answer really is kind of what your preference is, but realistically, your insurance policy covers you in any car that you're driving. So it covers the driver, not necessarily the car. So if you're renting a car, realistically, your auto policy is going to respond. So when they say, you know, do you want to take Enterprises coverage or Hertz coverage, you can say no if you want to, and if you're comfortable with your own policy covering you. However, that does mean that if a loss happens, you're going to be going through your insurance company. So if you don't get the coverage, if you don't use us and you use the coverage through the rental coverage, they will kind of help you with that claim, but you might be on your own if you don't get it. So it's really important that even if you are renting a car every once in a while or getting a zip car, that you know where your coverage is coming from, and you might possibly want to keep some sort of policy, maybe a specialized policy like Sammy said, in order to make sure that you're still getting that coverage when you're renting a car.
Definitely. Awesome. Thanks, Amanda. So I think next we'll go into the different kinds of losses and different kinds of coverages that you see under an auto policy. So there are definitely a lot of different kinds of coverages that are included in auto policy, but we like to think of it as kind of two different sections, and these are going to be your third party and your first party coverages. So Coverage A, we talked about liability insurance in terms of your renter's policies and your homeowner's policies. So it is still going to be similar for your auto insurance in terms of it being paid out to somebody else. This is third-party coverage. It's not going to respond for you, but if you were in an accident, it would respond to someone else. So there are two different kinds of liability insurance, as we mentioned before, property damage and bodily injury. So if you are deemed at fault for an accident and the other person in the accident, let's say you got in a little fender bender and the other person's car is damaged because of it was your fault, and maybe they broke their arm or they broke their leg, hit their head, and they need to go to the hospital, and they accrue some medical expenses that they need to pay. This is where your liability insurance is going to pay out. So that's third-party coverage to somebody else. Then we come to coverage D, which is damage for your auto. So this is going to be first-party coverage, and first-party coverage is always going to be paid to you. So if you're in an accident, damage is done to your vehicle because of a collision or something that's other than collision, your insurance company is going to fix to pay the damages to your vehicle after you pay out your deductible. So the deductible is the amount that you pay before your insurance company chooses to kick in. So kind of going off of that damage to your vehicle, what are some typical losses that your insurance policy is going to respond to? So that first party coverage, we have collision and other than collision accidents. So a collision might be you're driving down an old country road, it's a nice afternoon, but there's this huge turn in the road. You're taking it kind of fast and you turn across the road and there is a tree that fell into the road and you ram into it. It results in an accident. Maybe the front of your car is damaged. You need coverage for that. So that's going to be a collision accident. So again, you will pay your deductible. Maybe it's $500, maybe it's $2,500. It's up to your decision when you sign up for your policy. But you'll pay that, and then your insurance policy will respond to pay the rest of the claim. Then there's other than collision coverage as well. So this is maybe you live in a remote area, you park your car in your driveway and there's a lot of trees around, and there's a storm that happens and one of those trees falls and smashes your car. Or maybe you live in the city and there's a storm and one of the stoplights falls down and hits your car. I know that actually happened to my aunt. That's going to be considered other than collision coverage. Again, you'll pay your deductible, and then your insurance policy will pay out to fix your car. Something that's important to remember too with the other than collision coverage, this is the coverage that you need to cover you for theft. So if your car is stolen, you're only going to have coverage if you have other than collision coverage. So something to definitely consider when you are choosing what kind of coverage you need. If you feel like you may be at risk of having your car stolen, you definitely need to have that other than collision coverage.
Something that other than collision coverage also covers is a hit and run. So like Sammy said, there might be situations where you feel that, if your car was to be totaled, you wouldn't repair it and you would just get a new car. Especially if you have an older car, maybe you've had it through high school and college, that can be very, typical. And some people like to take off their collision coverage or maybe their physical damage coverage and just have liability on the car. Be careful of that, because if it is something that you are getting into a hit and run, situation and you don't know who hit you, that's when that other than collision coverage does come into play.
Yeah, definitely. And if you do happen to get into an accident, regardless of what it is, Definitely the first thing you want to do is obtain the information of the other party involved. So get their contact information, any insurance information that you can get from them, of course, their name, all of that information. And a lot of people might think, I just got in a minor offender pender, I don't want to call the police. We always recommend that you do. Call the police, have them come, even if it's a minor accident, and take a report. This is really going to help the adjuster and the claims handler when they're trying to settle everything. If they have a police report, the more documentation that you have, the easier it's going to be to determine kind of what your settlement is going to be. And then, of course, call your insurance company and get that claims process started. Different companies might have different ways that you can do this. You might be able to do it through an app, or just calling a representative is sure to be a department that is there to assist you in those kind of situations.
I definitely recommend also getting the other person's insurance company when you're getting that information. So one thing that happened to me after college, I came out to my car in my parking lot of my apartment complex, and I saw a note on my windshield, which usually most people are pretty scared about, but I was really appreciative about this one because one of my neighbors had actually kind of sideswiped my passenger side of my car, and it looked like it was a lot of damage, but it kind of looked pretty minor. So I actually reached out to that person. They left their phone number, and he asked me if we could go through just him paying me a check. I know that can be pretty tempting because you might not want to go through your insurance company. You want to just get it settled right away, but that's not the best way to go. You really do want to go through your insurance company. I said to him, unfortunately, fortunately, I work for an insurance company, and unfortunately, I know how much these things can cost. So I'm really glad that I did, and I'm sure he's glad in the long run because those damages, while they looked pretty minor, were close to $3,000. So, I feel like if I had reached out to him and told him the auto body shop told me $3,000, he probably would have laughed and he wouldn't have given me the money. So I was very grateful for going through my insurance company in that situation.
Yeah, definitely a good point. And something to keep in mind too is, like Amanda said, maybe the other person involved offers to pay you $200 in cash at the scene of the accident. And that's going to be it. They're going to drive off, and you think that this $200 is going to cover you for this little scratch in your bumper. You never really know how much it's going to cost. There could be underlying damage that you didn't realize was caused by the accident. And if you choose to kind of settle that claim on your own with the other party involved, your insurance company is not going to respond after that. So we always encourage you, go through your insurance company. In the long run, it's definitely going to be worth it. And we want to make sure that you are fully covered in the event of a loss. So you probably aren't going to get a settlement for what's necessary if you are going through the other person.
I have one more example too. When I was pretty young, actually, I think I was only about 18, I very lightly tapped someone in front of me getting off an exit ramp. So I rear-ended them, and usually rear-ending is always your fault if you're the one who hit that person. So I knew that I had tapped into her, but we both got out of the car, we looked and both saw that there really wasn't much damage. And she said to me, nope, everything's great, but let me get your information just in case. I really kicked myself for not calling the police. I think I want to blame it on just being young and naive. She actually went back and reported bodily injury to others in her car when she was actually the only one in the car, but I had no way of proving that. So please call the police, get a report as much as you possibly can, because you really don't want to run into any of those situations where you can kind of get yourself in trouble there too.
Yeah. Definitely don't want that happening. So let's talk a little bit about this quoting process as well. So if you're purchasing a vehicle for the first time, maybe you have a car, but you're finally coming off of your parents' insurance, definitely have to have some information in order prior to calling your insurance company, and especially prior to driving a new vehicle off the lot at the dealership. So when you're calling your insurance company, a couple of things to remember. You'll need the VIN. So this is the vehicle information number. It is unique to every car. It helps the insurance company kind of determine what the make and model is, what information there is, which also contributes to your rate. Having your license number available will definitely be needed. The purchase price of your vehicle and when you'll be picking up the vehicle. So like I said, if this is a new car that you are about to drive off the dealership, definitely know how much that's costing you and also when you plan on taking the vehicle home. maybe an idea of some of the coverages that you had with your previous insurance. So if you are coming off your parents, have that conversation with them and see what their limits were previously. Or maybe talk to your friends and see what their limits are. In addition, most of us coming right out of college are going to have to lease a car or have some sort of financing. So you do need to have the bank's information on hand because it will be listed on your policy as well because they do have a financial interest.
With that too, if you are leasing your car, you're definitely going to want to look into gap insurance. So either through the financer or through your insurance company. Basically what that does is if you were to have a loss on your car and you still had an outstanding balance on your lease or financing, they'll pay the difference between that. So just something to keep in mind. And you also have to do that, I believe, within 30 days. Mm-hmm. So it's right when you purchase the car. So make sure that you're aware of that. And I definitely recommend you get that coverage because you don't want to be in a situation where 2 weeks after getting your first car and you have that still amount owed that you're going to be out that. So
yeah, definitely. And like Amanda said, you have 30 days to do that. So have a conversation with both the finance company, the dealership, and your insurance company and find out where you're going to get that coverage from. In addition, it's definitely best to call your insurance company before you go to pick up the vehicle. If you have all of that vehicle information, this is going to expedite the process and the amount of time that you have to spend in the dealership, which we know can be lengthy and maybe a little uncomfortable. You always have the option to call the insurance company while you're at the dealership and provide them information. Maybe you go and you find a car that you really love and want to take it off the lot. Call your insurance company with the dealer on the line. If you are calling prior to picking up the vehicle, typically the dealership will want to know that you have insurance before letting you take the vehicle off the lot. So they might call and ask the insurance company to provide proof of insurance. And what we send is called a binder. So this binder really just shows temporary evidence that, yes, you are going to have coverage on your vehicle once you drive it off the lot. And at that point, your insurance company will process, once the car is picked up and taken off the lot, your insurance company will process your policy, which effectively puts the policy into effect. So definitely something to keep in mind. Stay ahead of this if you can. It's just going to expedite the process and make everything a little bit easier for you. Some additional things that we'd like to mention, previous losses and violations are going to impact your premium. So maybe you were in a fender bender before, maybe you just got your license and you got a speeding ticket. If your insurance company asks, which they will, if you had any losses and violations, maybe it's within the last 5 years or the last 3 years, the insurance company is going to find out anyways when they run reports. So it's much easier if you just disclose any information that you know, and those things are going to impact your rate as well. An ID card is the proof that you have insurance. So this is something you should definitely keep either in your glove compartment, keep it somewhere in your car, maybe keep it in your wallet. In addition, we've mentioned apps before. A lot of insurance companies have their own apps now where you can access all of your information. ID cards are definitely something that would be included in that. So if you have a loss or if you get pulled over and you need to show that you have proof of insurance, ID card, you never want to get caught not having that on you. I know that we talked a little bit about coverages before. There are different limits that you'll have in terms of those coverages. And something that we want to point out is, like we said, most states are requiring, they enforce pretty strictly that you need to have insurance. And there is a state minimum limit of insurance. So, here in Rhode Island, it's $25,000, $500 or $50,000 for that liability coverage. But really, this isn't going to be sufficient should you get into an accident. This is just the state minimum. We always recommend that you go with higher limits, maybe $100,000, $300,000, or $250,000, $500,000, which is going to be more sufficient if you're in a major accident and someone else is injured and they need to go to the hospital for an extensive period of time or have physical therapy for an extensive period of time. Those state minimum limits are not going to cover you. Typical hospital stays nowadays can climb up into those hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we want to make sure that you are accurately covered in those kinds of situations. So I think that kind of wraps it up for auto insurance. Definitely important to understand. It can be a little bit confusing, but you do have that liability coverage. You also have that first party coverage if you're in a loss. And then remember all of that information that you do need when you're calling in to get a quote.
Awesome. Thanks, Sammy. So one more type of insurance that not many of us think of really at the time of graduation, or even sometimes the first couple of years out of graduation, but it is something that you want to start thinking of. The earlier, the better. We do recommend that you start thinking of life insurance. So life insurance really is to help protect the financial future of your loved ones and plan for unforeseen needs. So the American Council of Life Insurers recommend that Americans purchase a policy that has a value that's about 7 to 10 times their annual income, but most people only purchase 2 to 3 times their annual income. So you really can see that there's a huge gap in what people actually have for coverage and what they really need. So when do you really need to have life insurance? So like I said, it's really to protect the financial future of your loved ones. So a lot of the times that you need to start thinking of it are when you're really adding to, not just you, maybe if you're adding to your family. Starting your career is going to be one of the biggest ones. You'll have to start thinking about it because your employer will offer you some life insurance, so you'll want to understand what that coverage is. Maybe if you're getting married or buying a home, if you're welcoming a child and raising your family, or maybe you're kind of further down your career looking at empty nesting, or if you're retiring. A lot of those things, like I mentioned, also have a financial aspect to them. So you want to make sure that you are really protecting kind of the debt that you have and the assets that you have, so that in the event of a tragic loss, your loved ones are really covered for it, and they don't have to come up with that money on their own, which can sometimes be really expensive. So speaking of what's kind of covered under the life insurance policy, paying for your final expenses can be really expensive, so it will cover that. A mortgage to help your family keep their home, maybe your children's care and education, any everyday expenses to maintain a standard of living, or making up for your lost income. So realistically, if you're either the primary source of income, or if you're not, maybe the secondary source of income, you're still going to have a huge loss, especially financially. So make sure that you are really protecting your family and helping them for any future needs that they might have. So at the point where you're looking for life insurance, it might be kind of confusing, and really you don't have any idea of how to choose, really what you want and what you need to cover yourself. So some of the information that you're going to need when you are getting a quote for insurance is any of your own personal information. So any background on your own health, your lifestyle, any recreational activities. If you're someone who takes risks, your likelihood, your premium might be a little bit higher because you are taking those risks. Any of your own medical history and any beneficiaries that you have. So the more beneficiaries you have, the more coverage you're going to need. So one thing that we do suggest, Amica actually has a life insurance calculator on our website. I'm sure other companies have it as well. But you can input any of this information, including any future expenses, any debt you have, replacement income that your family would need, and any other current assets or life insurance that you might have. So like I mentioned, your employer might provide you with a small policy, but typically it's not enough. So you want to make sure that you understand how much you're going to need. And I recommend starting this process earlier in life. So oftentimes the premium's a lot cheaper, and you can lock that in for the rest of your life. So you'd have a cheaper premium for the rest of your life instead of, if you look to get it when you're 50 or 60, it's going to be a lot different at that time. And the quoting process and really to get it approved can take anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. So just be aware that that might take a little bit of time for you.
Yeah, and I think Amanda makes a really good point with those, what's covered, those final expenses. We don't want this to be morbid, but things like a casket can cost up to $10,000, a couple of tens of thousands of dollars. And it's stuff that you wouldn't think of that beforehand. It's not something that we like to think about, and we recognize that. But you don't want to put your family at risk for having financial instability after you pass. Because they want to have funeral services for you. So it's definitely something good to keep in mind. Like Amanda mentioned, being younger is definitely a better time to look into getting a quote for that life insurance.
Awesome. So I know we definitely threw a lot of information at you, but we hope that we kind of gave you a good overview of some of the things that insurance policies consist of and what you're looking for. But realistically, when you're choosing a policy and when you're choosing a company that you want to get insured with, it's really going to be up to you what your decision is. So we encourage you to, every once in a while get quotes from different companies. It's always good to know what's out there, and maybe you are spending too much at that company that you're with, and maybe you're just not happy with the service that they're giving you. So make sure that you're quoting comparable policies if you're going to. Make sure that you're not, you have really great limits of liability at your company right now, but then when you go to another company, they really want your business. They're going to quote you a little bit lower. So, sometimes you can send them your, your policy and let them know, what coverages you have to make sure that they're equal, but just make sure that you're reviewing those as well. But other things can really affect your decision, such as maybe the values of the company, what their customer service is all about, and their claims handling. So definitely read reviews on companies, look at business reports, check and see if they have any awards that they're, getting. One of the biggest things that we pride ourselves on here is our customer service and claims handling. So throughout the quoting process and making changes, we really want to educate you, make sure that you understand what coverages you have, and then in the claims process, we want to make sure that we're getting back to you as soon as possible. And one thing we do here that's different than a lot of companies, I think, is that we're looking to be able to find ways to give you coverage in the event of a loss, not to deny coverage. So make sure that you're considering those things when you are choosing a company. But again, like I said, you want to look around, get quotes other places to make sure that you're finding the right fit for you and the right situation that you're in and what you're most comfortable with. So, that kind of wraps it up for what we have insurance related. I know that was a lot. We do want to leave you with some of our contact information, so feel free to reach out to us. My email address is adilley, DILLEY, at amica.com, and Sammy's is S. McSweeney, MCSWEENEY at amica.com, and we're happy to answer any questions, or you can give us a call, reach out to us online, or give us a call and ask any questions about your policies. But we'd like to thank you for the time that you've spent with us, and we wish you the best of luck in finding your insurance company you want to work with.
Definitely. Thanks for joining us today, and definitely if you have any questions, feel free to reach out for us and check out Amica as well. So thanks again.
Wow. Thank you so much, Amanda and Samantha. And on behalf of all of us at Bryant, again, we'd like to say thank you for a fantastic and informative presentation. I know as I move forward into my adult life, I will come back to this webinar for the valuable information you shared. We'd also like to thank all of our listeners for tuning into this presentation. Our entire webinar series archive can be found at alumniconnect.bryant.edu under the Careers tab. If you've enjoyed this webinar and haven't listened to part 1 already, please visit our website. And as always, you can visit our website for more information. This concludes today's webinar. Thank you and have a great day.